Moscow time is 13 hours 9 minutes. We continue to report on the flight of the transport ship and the orbital complex at the intersection and docking site. Now you're gonna have the Lighthouse 19 talking to you. Lighthouses, according to our data, the process of convergence is that we have permy remarks of the 200-meter-long cruiser going to hang out. Wait for hours. Do you understand me? Many of those involved in space are familiar with this building in Kaliningrad. Having crossed his threshold, we enter the main building of the Space Mission Control Center. And you're gonna be able to control spaceships and stations that fly around the Earth heading for the planets of the solar system. The Flight Control Center is the main link of the control loop. Organizes the interaction of ground-based services providing space launch, ground-based and floating tracking stations, drainage, simulation and search facilities. The main task of the extensive terrestrial services system is to make the orbital complex and its crew operational. Why do we need such powerful support for the Earth? The orbital complex is a unique scientific and research laboratory, unlike human knowledge of the tools used to explore the environment. Only from the altitude of orbital flight can you systematically observe the vast expanses of the Earth's surface. Interesting for science and the economy. Astrophysics objects whose research from the Earth interferes with the planet's atmosphere become available to sports at the complex. Space photography and filming reveal areas that are promising for the search for large mineral deposits. Out-of-orbit observations help to identify areas where fishing expeditions operate and to adjust the timing of agricultural activities. And here's 5 minutes of taking the Earth's surface out of space. It's working. Right, mine, at least 2 years of aerial photography. Only outside the Earth's atmosphere can there be weightlessness, roads, vacuums, and other space factors. These unique conditions contribute to the creation of new technology, provide over and above pure Mond crystals and thin homogeneous film coatings, and explore original designs that are useful for the development of space and Earth technology. The language of orbital flight also provides exceptional possibilities for exploring the effects of space factors on the human body, different species of plants and living creatures. The most complex technical system is the orbital complex and in itself represents the subject of research. On board one station alone, Salyut 77 are about 150 scientific instruments, over 2,500 life support devices for the station. At 600 tumblers, buttons, switches, almost all of them are tested during flight and, after all the performances have been worked out, are used as part of a series of devices used in automatic machines. The research and testing carried out during the manned flight affects more than 100 areas of science and technology. Stopped without the support of the Earth. Neither the crew of the complex nor the onboard automatics can cope with this amount of research. This is all the more difficult because the results of most studies are unpredictable. That's why Earth watches its messenger so closely. How is the flight managed long before the start? A common flight program is being developed. It defines, in addition to the main goals and objectives, the main stages, the dates of launch and the duration of the missions to the orbital station, the composition of the experiments to be carried out during the flight. Careful and targeted training is being developed and carried out. These padre are the main ones. Duplication. A few months before the launch of the next mission, the ballistic specialists of the control center specify the date and time of the launch. The time of launch of the ship shall be calculated in such a way that the launch plane, which, after launch, will move the ship, coincides with the orbital plane of the station. In addition, in order to connect the ship and the station with minimal fuel costs, the station must be ahead of the ship approximately 10 kilometers, that's a quarter of a turn. The Cosmodrome Service, in accordance with the designated time control center, prepares the launch and launch of the spacecraft into orbit of the Earth Yapos' artificial satellite. At all stages of the preparation and launch of the ship, Cosmodrome informs the center of the preparations. The center Yapos' specialists are provided with telemetric data on the condition of the crew and the readiness of the onboard systems, and radio communications with the crew are broadcast, television coverage from the launch position from the ship's side. Following the launch of the spacecraft into orbit, it is connected by means of a tracking station located in the territory of the Soviet Union and in the waters of the oceans and seas. Each station carries out a radio exchange within the radio-obvious area of its facilities.
The sports tee of the station's orbital complex transmits it to the control center.
At the same time, the information is being transmitted on board. Communications between the center and the tracking stations are provided through television and telephone channels. Within 24 hours, the space complex takes 16 times to acquire land, each passing over new areas of the Earth's surface. That's why there are turns that go out of sight of the ground stations. Radio exchanges on such turns are provided by floating tracking stations. The control center communicates with remote ground and floating tracking stations by means of communication satellites. Due to the movement of the flight track relative to the station's visibility complex at various points would have met him at the right place. Guidance is needed. The reference data for the purpose of the instructions are given by the ballistic service of the control center. On the basis of radio and measurements carried out by monitoring stations, ballistics determine the orbital parameters of the ship. Complexes and diagrams of the developed maneuvering schemes are included in the detailed daily plan. Detailed Daily Plan Basic Management Document. In addition to the maneuvering scheme, it contains a program to operate the onboard systems of smooth radio exchange of information on board. The communication session is happening towards a detailed daily plan. In the marsh, the reference data for the digital computing complex and the command of individual systems are transmitted. Command information is automatically transmitted on board without crew involvement. During astronauts, it's too expensive to spend it on a routine job that can be trusted with automatics. The crew focuses on scientific and technical experiments. It takes 2.5 hours for an astronaut to enter data to control the docking process by means of a manual remote. The automatic enters in 10-20 seconds to check if the commands are not correctly understood on board. During the communication session, the control center controls the operation of the onboard systems, the condition of the crew, fuel and electricity. Telemetric sensors, and there are about 1,000 on the ship and over 12 on the station. Every hundredth of a second is given by their testimony, which serves as the nation YAPO's basic information for governance. To protect against interference, telemetric information is encoded and transmitted to the ground by several streams. The rate of transmission of each flow is greater than 25,000 measurements per second. All these data need to be deciphered, linked to time as they become available. And all values need to be converted to appropriate dimensions. Special tables have been drawn up for telemetric control data. The formulas are sent for analysis to the relevant specialists, who provide a final assessment of the performance. Sir. It doesn't matter the circular the end of the zone to the group leaders to report the results of the session. I'm 119. Except for the first lock. Nope. Accepted in 101st time the 9th first communication session. An experiment was conducted to observe the silver clouds. New and interesting data have been found on the crew report and need to be clarified. The experiment should be repeated for the next 3 years, then adopted the report of the 9th. The first recommendation of the 9th is accepted by him in a circular. The communication session is conducted under the regular program, taking into account the recommendation of the 9th. The control cycle at the next turn has been completed. As long as the orbital complex remains invisible at the tracking station, planners are exploring possible options for an apology and a detailed plan to implement accepted recommendations. Once the best option is selected, the plan will be adjusted expeditiously. The debrief communication systems and the internal dashing of the control center will make it possible to communicate the adopted daily Plan updates to the services concerned without delay. The recommendations will be handed over to the crew of the orbital complex. If necessary, specialists use physical and mathematical models of the orbital complex. They could not only quickly explore possible options, but also clarify the reason for the refusals or model the way out of the emergency situation. Saya. The process of unique work in outer space uses the station Yapos S model as models in the hydraulic basin. Electronic replication of the operations performed by cosmonauts ensures the readiness of the center plus for surprises. So from the session to the session, it's going to be 24 hours, weeks, months until the program is finished. And the day of resurrection will come. The day that the control relay will be handed over to search specialists in the area in the pre-planned landing. They will meet the landing vehicle with care and will assist the crew. And to our home planet. There's a touch. Spaceship Union. The dead are still us. Congratulations on the completion of the snowball of the orbital complex to remove the stump. The ship's flight has been completed. The correspondents of newspapers, radio, and television accredited to the control center are in a hurry to communicate to the general public the details of the successful return of the members of the orbital expedition. 150 daily flights have been successfully completed. The crew of the Salad 7 Orbital Scientific Research Complex has returned to the ground. Let's get a message, TASS. Soviet space has achieved a remarkable new development in the field of manned flight. But the flight of the orbital scientific complex continues. It must bring the world new discoveries, new names, wonderful achievements. The operation of the control center and other land-based services continues. There is a need to process the results, analyze the achievements, and, of course, prepare for the next.
Sort